All right, welcome to Biomassed, episode 59. Let's get ready to rumble for CPM2 candidacy. So that's my funny FM DJ radio voice for the night. What we're going to do tonight is our first kind of official CPM2 candidate segment. That's kind of the big piece that we have on tonight. We've got a ton of people in the room tonight, like literally. So we're going to have a long set of intros. It'll be awesome. We're going to do our normal CPM update, and I think Zell might have something a little bit special for us, not so much a CCP update, but a promotion that he's looking to put on. And then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to have the first of probably several CPM candidates over the next couple weeks that we give a brief segment to, where we have myself and Aiwha Bait do a quick deep dive with them, and then we tee up some main topics of discussion like we normally do here on Biomassed. So tonight we have kind of the one and the only Aeon Amadi, the crown prince of Dust Rage / one of the most technically sound and most incisive wits that we have in the game right now. So it'll be a really fun show tonight. He's a really, really super sharp guy. Little bit polarizing, but you know what? A lot of people that make you question and think are like that. So this should be a pretty good deal. And like I said, a ton of folks on tonight. So we'll try to keep the gladiator match to to some level of focus as we get started. So with that, what we're going to do is we're going to start off with our introductions. We're going to work from the bottom of the mumble list to the top. So with that, Silly Rabbit, you mind giving us a quick intro?
Hey, what's up, guys? Silly Rabbit, Director of Negative Feedback and Logi Enthusiast.
Outstanding. SMD?
SirManBoy here, Director over at Molon Labe, member of CPM1, and hopefuls for CPM2.
And a third-degree black belt in Hive Jitsu.
Not quite.
Okay, Pokey.
I'm Pokey Dravon from OSG Planetary Operations and a co-host here on the Biomass podcast and a writer/editor for the blog.
And spreadsheet maestro extraordinaire. Okay, so middle of the list, Soraya Xel.
Yeah, I'm Soraya Xel, member of CPM1, co-host here on the show, an editor on the blog, and that's about it.
Awesome. Kain?
Yes, I'm Kain Spero, leader of the Negative Feedback Alliance and former member of the CPM.
And shadow governor of the CPM2 candidacy.
I just want to say, as much fun as it's been this year, I am looking forward to being able to use that, Kain. Former member of the CPM. That's sounding really, really appealing right about now.
See,
but
I
you're
told
running,
you.
so I mean, you know.
I'm not running.
We've already submitted your packet, Kain. It's okay. Moving on. Dystopia.
Hey, this is Dystopia, acting Director of Internal Air and Badass Scout.
Absolutely. Now, this is your first time on Biomass, correct?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. We really appreciate you coming on, man. It's really good to get some fresh voices in here and kind of talk about things from a different perspective. So feel free to throw some elbows and get in the conversation.
Definitely. Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. Okay, and the clown prince of crime himself, BAMM HAVOC.
Hey, just regular dude. Not a director of anything apart from beer and bacon. Yeah, it's just me. Okay.
Well, if you're going to direct something, beer and bacon's probably the thing. So I'll give you props on that.
Where to go, man. It's where to go.
All right. Aiwha?
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Aiwha Bait, director at the Demonic Cowboys and writer for the Biomass blog.
Absolutely. And kind of our special guest tonight, Aeon.
Aeon Amadi, resident psycho and grunt and negative feedback.
Absolutely, man. We really appreciate you coming on. And like I said, you're going to be the first CPM2 candidate for the kind of pseudo-official set of interviews that we have. So we really do appreciate you coming back on. And I'm Jaysyn Larrisen. I'm a member of OSG Planetary Operations. I don't do anything with the blog other than stare at it and go, wow, Pokey did some good work on the headers. I don't really write much. I don't poke a lot of people on the forums. But apparently I can do a pretty good Arnold Schwarzenegger impression, and I can do a pretty fair Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair on occasion, so they have me on the podcast. So with that...
Can we hear the Ric Flair?
Maybe. The show's got to go well before I can bring out the Nature Boy. So, okay. All right. With that, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to start off with Soraya in the CPM update.
Yeah, so as Rotati mentioned, there are definitely things coming. I've seen a screenshot or two, which is pretty awesome, and hopefully they'll have more to say on that going forward. I know it's been pretty quiet, but so aside from CPM stuff, I'm gonna offer a contest, and I'm gonna explain why. Is some people might have noticed that the podcast did not get posted last week until the following Friday, as in like 2 days ago. And the reason why is actually because editing the podcast doesn't take very long because I don't really edit much. I just, cut off the front and the back and truncate silence, and that's that. I don't pay enough attention during the show or take good notes.
This is true. We can absolutely.
Yeah. So what happens is I don't have a good one sentence summary for the episode, and that bugs me. And so I keep saying, okay, well, I need to get that summary before I can post it. So I'll have it edited, sometimes even uploaded to Amazon already. But it doesn't get posted for days because then I have friends over, so I can't sit there listening to the podcast while I have friends over, etc. It's a pain in the butt. It takes me forever to get it done. And I realized I have over 1 billion ISK sitting in my wallet in Dust, and I can pay people to make my life easier and make me have to do less work. So here's the challenge. Is I will post the podcast pretty much without a description as quick as I possibly can. But regardless of when I post it, until Wednesday of each week, you can send me your 1 sentence, summary of the episode. You can see the previous examples on our website. And the best one that I get emailed to Soraya@biomassed.net will be used on the podcast feed. And I will send that person, you've got to include in your email your exact character name and game, I will send them 2 million ISK. And above and beyond that, if you really want to if you want to go above and beyond, you can write you can write kind of an extended show notes for the blog post part of it, which can be a little longer than what's in the XML feed. And if you want, you can put links to stuff we talked about during the show, whatever. And then if you do that, I will bump that up to 5 million ISK, and I'm going to do that every week. And this week you can get twice that because I still didn't write anything for last week's episode, and so you can send me a summary of last week's and a summary of this week's. But you've got to do it by Wednesday. You've got to send it to Soraya@biomassed.net and include your character name so that I know who to send it to.
Okay, so we're going to pay people to throw the byline for the podcast stuff, right?
Basically, I'll give people credit too for having come up with the winning description.
Okay, that's pretty legit. I can kind of work with that. All right, anything else you got, man?
That's it.
Okay, and for the record, to give you a quick grade, that is much better than your normal CPM updates. Because even though you didn't have anything to say, you've taken the last 3 weeks of constructive criticism that we've given you on the air, and you've basically been able to say nothing while saying something. So that's good. Okay, so we will all give Soraya Xel, I'm thinking, a B+ for today. So we're going to need you to continue to work on this, and then next week we'll give you another grade for your CPM updates that say nothing but allow you to actually make noise. How about that? All right. So, Bait, you about ready?
I am ready whenever you are.
Okay, man. So what we're going to do is we're going to transition over to our discussion with Aeon Amadi, who is a longtime player. And if I'm not mistaken, Aeon, jump in here. I think you've been around since closed beta, right?
June 2012.
Oh, wow. You're definitely one of the long in the tooth guys then. So a general intro here from Bait and myself on Aeon. He is obviously a well-known poster in the forums, and he's been around in the community for a very long time. Has actually offered quite a bit of technical feedback and some pretty solid, kind of hands-on, how do I just play the game feedback to folks. As always, he's a very opinionated guy, and that's one of the reasons that we think he's actually a pretty good candidate, because he will make you think through, either from a player's perspective, he'll make you think through what you're trying to do or produce, or look at things from a slightly different way. And he will also probably, I would suspect, be able to challenge CCP and make them think through things from a different perspective. So with that, what we'd like to do is ask you a couple really basic questions. And if there's anything else you want to add to your intro before we get started, please have at it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I'll just lead off with really the easy one. So you ran for CPM 1 last year, and it was a really crazy election because there's a lot of things going on in terms of just after the Rouge Wedding, or relatively just after the Rouge Wedding. A lot of people not really understanding what the heck the CPM was going to be, and it's certainly different now than what I think people thought it was going to be back then. But you've thrown your name in the hat, I believe, officially for CPM 2, and I was just kind of curious, why do you want to be a CPM member?
Well, honest to God, it started out as sort of like a troll because like everybody was I was kind of getting like a lot of hate on the forums, which admittedly I kind of deserved in more places than not. And eventually, like as I was joking around about it on Skype and in the game, people were just like, "Dude, you should like seriously run. Like, you should just put aside the trolling and actually like go for it." And so I'm sort of like kind of playing around with the idea, but at the same time, it's just like considering what happened last year's elections, I'm still sort of on the fence about it. But ultimately, I think the CPM still has a lot of work to do, and I'm not quite ready to give up on the game yet. I know there's like been a lot of like doomsayer threads all over the forums and saying that the low player count, but I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
Okay, well that's pretty fair. So now just to be clear, and I'm kind of going off what you just said, and I have read some of your forum posts recently on this. You are in fact a self-proclaimed serious candidate for CPM2. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Bait and I are going to kind of go left, right, left on this one. So Bait, if you don't mind, if you can take away with your first kind of basic question.
Yeah, sure. So a problem that I see, and I'm going to ask this to all the candidates. A problem that I see, in matches are people who will randomly back out of battles, whether they be at the middle or at the beginning, even. What are your thoughts, Aeon, on squads of, let's say, 3 or more that do that for whatever reason?
Man, it's always like I do a lot of Q syncs with negative feedback and whatnot, and we do faction warfare, and it's always it's really discouraging to join into match and then instantly see half the team leave. And I've been in a couple of matches myself where it's been like I've got screenshots where it's like I'm on a team where it's just only 3 of us against an entire 16-man team. Now I know a lot of people like want to jump and go right for the jugular and want to hang these kind of people and say like we should punish them and there should be like like consequences for leaving the battle. And while I can kind of agree with it, I don't think it's really going to solve anything. I mean, you're not going to stop people from leaving a battle they don't want to commit to. And I think we need to actually work on encouraging them to stay rather than punishing them for leaving. I mean, if it eventually gets to a point where like, encouraging them to stay isn't working, then we need to probably look at more punitive actions. But I mean, I kind of want to like go through the the positive route first, encouraging people to stay in the match rather than just back out at the first sign of trouble.
Sure, of course, that I totally agree with that. What about those people though who back out for, specifically reasons? Somebody got disconnected, somebody got dusted, somebody fucked up or whatever. How do you balance punishing those people, or well, I shouldn't say punishing, but punishing the people who actually leave because they don't want to stay in the battle because whatever reason, and I guess dealing with the people who back out for legitimate reasons. How would you suggest balancing that at all?
Yeah, there's been a lot of suggestions on the forums, and like a lot of people say like, oh, there should be an is collateral. I'm incredibly against that because that automatically assumes that they're going to leave, so they should pay up for that, and I don't agree with it because you never know what's going to happen. Like the best suggestion I've ever seen on the forums, and I really agree with this one, is having like an escalating sort of punishment. Like if you leave the battle, you have to wait like a minute or so before you can jump into another one, or if you get disconnected, because by the time you get back into the game after you've been disconnected, a minute's already passed, so that's not so bad, But if you leave a second battle, then it becomes 5 minutes. Of a third battle, it becomes 10 minutes. So it like really discourages people who are like constantly leaving battles, but it doesn't like it's not overwhelming punishment for somebody that just got disconnected.
Interesting. Thank you for that.
Okay. So a couple like kind of a general question for you, Aeon. You are obviously you have a very deep knowledge of the game itself. I have basically a couple questions. Generally, what other games do you play that informs how you look at Dust? Like, what are the other types of games you play? Is it mostly just first-person shooter consoles? Do you have anything that you think should be informing the CPM and the community and even the devs' kind of perception on how the game, things we can pull from other games that might be interesting down the road, or maybe even the short term that could be modified or adapted to what we have to work with in Dust on the PS3?
Okay, so it's sort of a multi-part question. I'll try to answer it as best I can. My primary gaming, I do mostly PC gaming. I used to do really big console gaming. Like I had an Xbox 360 for a while, had 3 of them that red ringed. Did PlayStation 3. I got the PlayStation 3 for Dust, so I can't really use that as a good example. But as far as a good examples of what we can learn from, I think you need to look at 2 things, 2 separate aspects of gaming as a whole. One, longevity. I hate to bring up EVE Online as a staple, but I mean, they've got 11 years under their belt. So, I mean, obviously they're doing something right. You got WoW, which is, as much as everybody hates WoW, it's a long time game, and they're doing something right if they're, continuing for as long as they have, especially with 15 million subscribers at one point. Then you also have to look at other gamings that sort of pop up out of the blue. No one saw Minecraft coming, and I don't want to say that we can, we should have more Minecraft than Dust 514, but it's the main thing that Minecraft brings to the table is that they provided something that you didn't know you wanted until you had it. And that's why it became so popular. It was Legos in a game, right? It's literally all it was. And it just took off, So when you're looking toward gaming as an example of what to do right, you need to look at those sort of aspects, providing something that doesn't exist yet, not making a cookie cutter sort of because you're never going to beat Call of Duty at their own game. You're not going to out Call of Duty. So trying, I think, is sort of inclined to failure. But, at the same time, you can borrow core aspects, but provide something unique and try to, craft your own little unique experience and give players something that they didn't know they really wanted to begin with. And then, that's what made Dust unique in a way. That's why we have such a niche player base. But at the same time, we're kind of lagging behind as far as technology. So we're kind of, limited on players. I don't just want to say that's the main reason, but, it could be.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of dive into something a little bit more specific to you. And we've kind of talked about it, and I think you're pretty self-admitted about this. You are, let's be real, a fairly polarizing guy, at least in terms of the way you've engaged people in the past. And I don't think anybody mistakes that you have a passion for the game and trying to make the game as good as it can be. But I'm just curious, how do you think you would be able to effectively communicate as a CPM based on your previous and to a degree your current sort of mode and history of how you have communicated with folks, either players or occasionally the devs themselves?
Yeah, a big factor with that is it has a lot to do with my ability for communication. A lot of times, I can't perceive tone very well, so I don't really know when somebody's being sarcastic and kind of joshing around with me, or when they're actually attacking me as a person. And I have a bad habit of misconstruing that, and I've been told that I'm a verbal badger when it comes to that sort of thing. So I usually just try to defend myself as much as possible, and I know that's not always necessary. But another thing is that I have self-admittedly I have issues communicating what I'm trying to say, as opposed to just actually getting it out. That's why I have usually 2 different approaches. Sometimes I'll be really emotional with it, and I'll be sarcastic and kind of giddy. But on the other side, I'll be really logical and approach things with by the books and numbers. So it is polarizing, admittedly. But a while back, maybe some of you have seen the thread, but I actually came out to the public and said, "Yo, look, I've been going to counseling for this for months. I know that I have anger issues, and I know that I have this polarizing personality. It's something that I've been working on, and that's very expensive, by the way." So not that really matters, but just throwing that out there is it's something I have been working on, and I understand that I do have a tendency to snap off out of the blue, but I'm a human being.
Okay. All right. So I guess all that being said, you believe you would still be an effective communicator within the Dust community and with the devs then?
Well, as far as the CPM, when I'm held to a higher standard, I think I have like a little bit better behavior, and I usually try to approach things a little bit more cautiously than just being my normal self. So I mean, as far as like, I'm not going to like go out and say, yeah, I will be an effective communicator. I don't know. I mean, I'm willing to admit that I really don't know, but I'm willing to give it my best. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Okay. No, and I think that's a very fair way to look at it. And most of the point of that question is ultimately getting at, it's so the community can kind of make their own determination. Do they trust that you will, while you would clearly have your own opinion, that you would at least represent them, or would you be representing yourself? And I know that that's a little bit of a muddled thing with the CPM in general, but that was sort of the point of those questions, is to let people understand a little bit more about where you're coming from. Because like I said, it's all in black and white. You can Google search for the best of them. And for a lot of your posts that are incredibly well constructed from a technical side, and you actually tease out some great feedback and discussion threads or feedback and ideas threads, you will occasionally get some uber trolley going. So I appreciate you addressing that. So I'm going to turn this back over to Bait for a couple questions.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Building off what Jay said just a second ago, Aeon, how do you feel that that some players will, I guess, respond to your past action as far as lashing out in an angry tone, or just a ragey attitude, I guess, for lack of a better phrase? Do you think that will turn some people off, or do you think that what you said just now will give people, will make them think, hey, maybe I should give this guy a chance?
Honestly, I mean, like, I'm not trying to change people's opinion. I'm really not. Like, if they're set in stone that I'm going to be an asshole, I'm going to be an asshole. But what I usually tell people is, look, my public self is a lot different than my one-on-one. So if you don't like the way I sound on the forums, hit me up, in game, or if you're close enough, like, come and I'll buy you a beer and we'll hash it out. So if you have like an issue with me, just bring it up to me and we'll see what we can do. But I mean, I'm not gonna like I'm not gonna like rampantly apologize and beg for forgiveness. I mean, it's just like, I understand that my past actions and my past behavior does reflect negatively on me, and I will, I'll say sorry if I really do mean it. But sometimes just like, there's really nothing I can say that's going to make the situation better, as I can't go back and change the issue, I can't go back and change the past. So the only thing I can do is look forward to the future and try to better myself from it. And I'm a little better on that with the one-on-one aspect, instead of like a public forum where I'll try to like say, oh, I understand your viewpoint, and then somebody else comes along and just, continues pestering. So it's sort of like a hit or miss sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah. I still have a few more questions. What play style do you usually play as when you play Dust?
I try to like experiment with a lot of things. Like lately, I've been experimenting with sort of like Caldari Assault with just shield extenders and profile dampeners, because I've been playing EVE Online, and I'm really I really like the Mordu's Legion ship. So there's nothing I can really do with that in Dust. But when I'm not experimenting, I always seem to gravitate toward this Galente Assault sort of CQC style combat. It's just always been my thing. I like the high octane action and just constantly, running around and jumping back and forth, and it's it's just sort of my thing.
Very good. Building off of that, in a recent forum post, you said that CPM1 had, quote, too many Logi players. And do you feel that having so many logistics players on CPM1 affected how certain things were looked at, I guess, in terms of buffing and nerfing?
To a degree. It wasn't that I said that there was too many Logi players, as I was just noting that there were a lot of Logi players in the CPM. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, I mean, like, I can't really give you good feedback on something that I don't run. It's like, I haven't run Sentinels since, closed beta, back when you could forge gun the friggin' RDVs and kill them faster than you could the tank. I mean, so trying to chime in from a heavy perspective, I mean, it's not going to be my forte. But in the same sense, like it's you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of deal. Is like, if you talk about something that you are aware of, you're biased, but if you talk about something that you're unaware of, you're ignorant. So it's kind of like having a balance. So as far as like the CPM one and how they how it affected the decisions for buffing and nerfing. I mean, I'm not going to say that because they were there's a couple of Logi players in there that it swayed their opinion, but I am going to say that it it would have helped to sort of open up for a little bit more feedback earlier on in the buff nerf cycle, instead of like, hey, these are the changes that are coming, and this is pretty much set in stone. The only thing we're really looking for is tweaks in either direction. So
well, now I've got to ask you a quick follow up on that. I'm curious. Can you point to something where you think that, like, right now I'm tracking that there's been basically no buffs to Logis. So are you referring to things that are more like assaulty, or
right,
like light weapons or something like that?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, I'm like looking forward to sort of seeing the changes the logistics are going to get. But I was like kind of disappointed to see that the logistic and the commandos, weren't getting their sort of like rebalance, their rehash this feature.
Do you think that, yeah, I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to unpack kind of your position, and that's all. I just try to understand kind of where the thread's going on it. I can totally understand if you look at a relatively small council of on paper 6, but or 7, but it was 6 very quickly, and you think it's overrepresented in one way or the other, that it could skew things. I'm totally on board with that idea. But I'm trying to understand, like, if there was something in particular you were driving at in terms of like something you thought maybe because of the makeup of the council it did not go well.
Well, good example, right? The whole deal with the movement speed changes and how like assaults were suddenly going to be slower than Logis. And like it was like for a while it looked like that was sort of like a set in stone sort of deal. Like that was like, hey, this is what we're doing. And it didn't seem like much of a feedback thread. Like they were looking for feedback. It was more like, hey, here's what we're coming up with. What do you guys think? And just like sort of fishing for good comments, because there really wasn't like, hey, what do you guys think we should do? There wasn't any questions. It was just displaying the chart and saying, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. So. And this isn't to say that like they were wrong, just that, I mean, like, what do you go off of? I mean, it's like when you have assaults just sort of on the slower end of the thing, on the slower end of the chart, getting more closer toward commandos as far as mobility. When a lot of assault players say, hey, look, we prefer mobility over EHB, and we'll take the EHB hit before the mobility. And then it was like the response was, oh, well, if you guys are really looking forward toward mobility instead of EHB, then that shows there's a critical problem with the mobility as a whole. Not that I disagree, just that, I mean, that's what the community wanted. So, I mean, I think it does kind of skew, and,
Well, no, I'm with you. I guess what I was not understanding is I personally couldn't make the logic leap, kind of the Mulderian leap of, you've got 2 primary Logi players on a council of 6, therefore suddenly assault speed got nerfed. I didn't pick up on that, and I know in some of the Logi specific commentary to the devs at least, what a lot of the community did ask for, was either, and it was literally kind of a take it or leave it, but increased survivability, period. But it's either comes through HP or speed. So I was just trying to figure out where you're coming from on that one, because maybe I'm biased, but I did not see a direct correlation between Logis on the CPM and poor feedback or a filtering of feedback from the community as far as assault players would go. So
look, I wasn't trying to insinuate that. I mean, that's not what I'm understanding at all. Fair. I mean, like, it's just, like it's like I said earlier, like how do you, give proper feedback on something that you don't run that often, Like,
no, that's fair. I can buy that. I trust me. I rarely speak up when it comes to anything vehicle related for that very reason.
Same.
I'm totally on board with you on that one. Okay, so what I would like to do, since we've had a really good kind of focus session with you, Bait, do you have anything last before we kind of move on to the main part of the show?
I do not know.
All right, so you got about a 30-second open mic for any kind of your rallying cry for the CPM2 Aeon. So as soon as you get done, what we're going to do is move into our first topic of the main block of the show, and everybody else will be chiming in. Okay. So the floor is yours for about half a minute.
I don't really have that much to say, honestly. It's just, my main goal is to provide the tools for the community to represent themselves, so they don't have to.
Okay, well, that's well said, man. And like I said, it's I highly encourage people to engage Aeon if they've got questions about anything you've heard here or on the forums. And I think that was big of you to tell people to get a hold of you because, like I said, you a lot of great ideas, but it's interesting sometimes, a little prickly sometimes to talk to, but maybe that's not always a bad thing. So what we're going to do, guys, we're going to open it up for everybody else on the net. So like I said, big room. And the first thing we wanted to kind of put out on the table to kind of go around, and this is a bit of a shot from Aeon himself. We were kind of kicking around the idea of some things to talk about. And I think it's kind of interesting, but some post-level 5 content. There's been a lot of discussion about very rudimentary drones. There's been a lot of discussion about pirate drop suits or different skill sets or any number of different things that you could add to the game for post-level 5 content. And the reality is that you can really pretty much max out a given role in Dust, at least as far as a drop suit type role goes, like running a heavy or an assault or such. And, somewhere around 7 million skill points, you can get quite effective. And then if you want to get any further with that, it's more about gaining breadth rather than depth in your content. So what I'd like to do is kind of open this up to the floor a little bit about what you think post-level 5 content might mean in Dust. And again, understanding the limitations that we have, we're not really doing too much long-range tinfoilery on this one. So Aeon, I tell you what, I'll give you first crack at it. What are your general thoughts on what might be some practical and feasible post-level 5 content that we could bring to Dust, or that you'd like the CCP guys to bring?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I want to start off with is the reason we need post-level 5 content is because you got a lot of players out there with like 60 million, like all the way up to 115 million is what I heard from one player as far as SP goes. And last year, Zatara himself was saying, we really need to add on more content because I've already maxed out everything for my playstyle. So we were having those issues last year, and we need to start exploring the options as far as what we're going to do with the post level 5 content and adding more to those specializations. And as far as general ideas, I had a thread about it. It's locked because because of age, but I was throwing together just spitballing ideas as far as roles and stuff, like a Spectre assault sort of deal, where it's instead of getting a weapon fitting reduction or a weapon bonus, it would get a profile dampen bonus, or maybe a different, a variant of that assault saying, maybe it's got a biotics bonus instead, something to offer up to the players after they've already graduated and gotten everything for their particular specialization after, something for them to look forward to afterward. So, I mean, it's sort of like drop suit roles, just adding a little bit more flavor to the mix is what I think is proper post level 5 content, honestly.
Do you see that as something you'd skill into, almost effectively adding a level 6, or are you looking at more a classic Eve style if you need level 5 and Gal assault and Cal assault to get X bonus?
Well, from what I was having a discussion with one of the developers, and he said that it's not really applicable to have cross bonuses like that, like the pirate ships in EVE Online, where you have to have Galente assault ships and Minmatar. It's not really applicable. But what they did say is that we could have different requirements. So you'd have to have assault drop suits level 5, like Caldari assault drop suits level 5, and profile dampening level 5 in order to unlock this suit, and then you get different bonuses for running that suit and having its level, or whatever it is. So yeah, I think that would be the best way to go about it, is to have it a sort of an unlock afterward, in the traditional EVE sense.
Okay, all right, that's fair. All right, so let's go ahead and kind of move around on this one. Silly Rabbit, you have coughed up a couple times. You were interested in this as well. Of what's next when you have a full 5 Logi or a full 5 Assault or whatever. I'm curious, if you were going to kind of narrow on what you think post level 5 content for Dust would be, what would you sort of throw out there on the table?
Well, I mean, just building off what he was saying, if you have that, they have to work within the realms of where they're at right now. So basically, what they let us know is that they can create within the guidelines that they're already in. I guess structurally within the game. So having a requirements for +5 Logi here, +5 Assault here to unlock this class right here, it seems very feasible. And I would like to see that as a loophole to segue into pirating suits or cross combination suits of a Mimitar and Caldari cross, or even a Mimitar and a Mar cross, or just different crosses with suits. And I feel that's just a whole nother topic in itself. You could just go down the rabbit hole with that in the pun. You could just travel as far as you want down that type of creative way, because there's just a realm where you can kind of make a new type of suit. And whatever that you can incorporate will, benefit it. It'll cross benefit. Like, it'd be awesome if you could, I guess, double.
You're cutting out, Silly. I'm going to assume what Silly's saying right now, because his mic key is red, is incredibly cogent to the discussion, and likely is probably going to change how we all perceive dust, from an emotional standpoint. But unfortunately, we can't hear him. So I'm going to move on. SirManBoy, I'm just curious, have you thought about some things for post-level 5 activity? Like, what would you like to see maybe for kind of the Logi class once you get full 5 and just about everything? What else would you like to see maybe that they could add to the table?
It's a great question, Jay, and it's definitely one that applies to a player like me. I mean, I'm about 150,000 skill points away from 100 million, so I'm definitely in that boat of players who is really running out of things to do, especially when you're someone like me who mostly just plays the Logi class and just sort of branches out from time to time, not a whole lot, to be perfectly honest. I mean, what a lot of these guys are saying is kind of where my mind is with it as well. You come up with some other suit class of some kind that combines the requirements of ones that already exist, and then from there you skill up, and then you end up with suits that have different behaviors and different bonuses and things like that. Beyond that, I've always been someone who's been interested in more active sort of modules that can give you temporary bonuses or strengths on the battlefield. Stuff like that is appealing to me. More things involving the war barge, that appeals to me too, because quite frankly, again, as I run out of things to skill into, I find that the war barge is more interesting, but there's not a whole lot we can do with it currently. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Mostly what everybody else is thinking, and I think it is something that we definitely need to tackle, because there are, every day more and more players who get to that 50, 60 million and above mark, and they're running out of things to do.
No, and I think that's a very fair way to look at it. For veteran players, it becomes a little bit more of an issue. So, okay, or even as a new player, there might be something that really strikes your fancy, and you just want to drive right into that, like very specialized role. Okay, all right. So, Pokey, I'm kind of curious. You and I have talked about this quite a bit, and I know that there's been some discussion even on the vehicle side about maybe the specialist vehicles getting some play in this, but maybe from a general play perspective. But if you can add anything from a veteran vehicle operator's standpoint, what might be some kind of long range post level 5 content you'd be interested in them exploring for Dust?
Well, I mean, initially when I first started looking at Dust, I always kind of saw the basic frames as kind of the Tech 1, and then you had the specialties, which were a Tech 2, but we never really got bonuses for the frames, or in this case, just the standard vehicles. So, I mean, it would be nice to see, like for drop suits, you've got, your frame suits, and I kind of consider that almost in line with the vehicles we currently have, which, aside from the Assault Dropship, don't have bonuses. So that being said, if you had like the Enforcer or the what's it called, the ultra heavy HAV, for example, that would be kind of like your current specialist suit. I consider that kind of where we need to get initially, but I would like to see him take it a step further and actually kind of have like a deeper specialization, and actually like a true, Eve style Tech 2, where it's less general, it's very niche, it's only going to be useful in certain situations, but with proper coordination and teamwork, it does serve a purpose, particularly when you're playing as a group, instead of kind of just a general purpose thing that we currently have. So in that regard, I would like to see something that's a little more pushing the boundaries of the extreme of a ton of HP but incredibly slow, reduced turret damage, stuff like that, where it really does fill that super specialized role that you can really lock into with a good organized group, opposed to what we currently have, which is allows for more solo play. Like, don't get me wrong, I think that having some more isolated solo play is good, but I also want to see people be rewarded in a more deeper fashion for specialized and very extreme instances of themes within a vehicle. So in terms of post-level 5 content, maybe an HAV, a Calorie HAV proficiency skill or something that unlocks a new set of vehicles, which is much more unique and specialized with new bonuses and whatnot.
Okay, all right, that's actually pretty good, and I do appreciate taking a look at it from a vehicle standpoint, because as I noted earlier, that's definitely something that I've got little background in, but it's always interesting to hear the veteran tankers or dropship pilots think through that from their perspective. Okay, so let's see who else we're going to ping up for this one. Dystopia, I'm kind of curious, man. What are your thoughts on this?
As far as post-level 5 content goes, I've had an idea about weapon specialization, as far as, extra attachments, such things like, we've already got, kind of extended magazine where you can level up your, how much ammo you have per clip, things like muzzles, grips, maybe stocks, and as far as optics, different sights, which would be nice, or even, what do you call the thing on the sniper rifle there? Brain fart for a second. But things like that, which would be, extra stuff you would skill into after, skilling up pretty much all the weapon, and then it would unlock extra things that you could add to the weapon, which would be really nice, I think.
So you're kind of looking at a hybrid approach of weapon customization, which is honestly kind of its own topic, and probably one that a lot of people would be very interested in, and like basically adding another layer behind the skill, so adding some additional skills into the current skill tree, so somewhere between those.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, all right, no, that's pretty legit, man. All right, so curious here, Bait, anything from you? Any thoughts on this?
No, I haven't given it much thought. I don't quite have enough skill points to be bored yet with what I'm working on. I think I'm broke. 34.
Okay. No, and that's, by the way, that's a fair statement in terms of this. And like I said, it's probably more interesting to folks that have been around for 12 months in the game than it is for and you've been around for a minute too, by the way. I'm not saying that you're JV guy. It's literally it's about perspective. Do you want to be an Uber specialist, or do you want you're literally kind of at the point where I can only get my level 38 ninja wizard, night elf mohawk any further than skill progression? Is there something else I can do? BAMM HAVOC, what do you got, man? Any thoughts on what you might like to see, something deeper in the skill tree, or maybe something different with suits for folks that are kind of already tapped out?
Yes, I would like to see many new things in Dust and skill trees and vehicles and suits and weapons and all that. But to be honest, I think you guys are looking at the wrong thing. I would like Dust to be stripped back down to nothing and then rebuilt. Fix the core and then build on a good solid foundation. That's what I would like to see. Instead of thinking about this, that, and the other, about how cool would it be for this. No. Fix the core. Stop the lag. Stop the silly render issues that you get in game, because you walk towards a structure and the structure's still rendering as you walk, and you're only like 20 meters in front of it, and until you get to the building, for example, it's fully rendered. But then as you step back, it de-renders itself. And increase the frame rate, for God's sakes. You can see that the game is on a shit platform, i.e. the PS3, because we all know Dust isn't working right on the PS3. Get off the platform, build the core better, all that jazz.
There's just like a switch at CCP called, it's like a frame rate switch, and they just leave it tuned down. They could just turn that up and you'd be running 60 frames per second. No problem.
Yeah, anyway, fix the core, build on a solid foundation and a solid core. That's what I would like to see happen in Dust, because that's what I want. But, hey, you can flip a switch and suddenly have 60 frames a second now, apparently, according to Xel. Helpful as always, dude. Thanks.
Well, so Now, this is actually kind of worth touching on because it's definitely a different way of looking at it. And post level 5 content, kind of by its very definition, is adding layers of content or something new to the game. And and a lot of people do talk about core for the game, and we've heard this many times. I'm not entirely sure that everybody has a common definition of what the quote unquote core of the game is. Now, Bam, you described, I think, what your perception of that is, and there is some definite validity to what you're saying. Is like, why continue to add more to this in terms of the greater resource choice? And that is I would point out to everybody in the room that was a hot and heavy topic of discussion this time last year, which was why are we messing around adding things to the PS3 at this moment versus putting everything we have into getting the port over, which is kind of what it sounds like you're driving at. That's not an evil position. That is a valid way of looking at it, but it's definitely a different approach it where you would advocate that CCP put their time and resources into.
Look, don't get me wrong, I'm all for the level 5 content. Shit, yes, I'd love to see actual vehicles that worked and people that had a good time in the game, but for me, why add stuff to what I consider that's already broken? Because you're just going to get people on the forums bitching and moaning and hate threading all over the place because, this is broken even more now, so on and so forth. Fix the basics of the game. Yeah, the core game might differ and vary from person to person, fair enough. But the only people that know what the core of the game is are the developers. All they need to do is just take the game back down to the basics, strip it down, build it up, and then maybe post level 5 content. Fix what the broken stuff is first. But then, hey, you can flip a switch now, so, it just happened apparently.
Honestly, I think CCP needs to figure out where they actually want to go as far as that kind of design, though. I mean, it wasn't until just recently that we figured out that Dust 514 was actually a tactical shooter. They finally just came out and said it, it was a tactical shooter, which before that we were sort of on the assumption that, is it a tactical? Is it a twitch? I mean, is Dust 514 high EHP or is it strafing? I mean, they never really come out and say it. You just kind of take a shot in the dark, and everybody's got different opinions. I mean, until CCP comes out and says, hey, this is what we want Dust to be, then, where is your core?
I mean,
I'm sorry, Silly, go ahead, please.
I would just say that this obvious subject that we're about to talk about and go further into probably is the elephant in the room when it comes to this game. And from my learning experience of seeing from the Rouge wedding, as we all call it, to now, this is a business, I would say that these guys are looking at it from a business perspective, so they're less inclined to help the game. It's down to, in my personal opinion, what you can bring is try to find ways to work with what you've got in a sense of, creating a better platform of enjoyment, therefore bringing in more people, and then just that better medium, because that was what was missing before, because they were just shelling it out to us so crazily. In my opinion, it was kind of just like, okay, what's this, and it was extremes of extremes, and you lost a lot of people. And it's either you went with the curve, because the curves were extreme when it came to adjustments to the game always, because the game in itself is so complex. It's just a lot. It can push away a lot of people. So you want to bring a funner aspect to the game. We could break it down to the core, but I really personally feel the game's been already broken down, it's as low as it could possibly go. This game had a lot more, in my opinion, around.
And it was just getting interesting. God damn.
Silly, can you hear us, man? Can you do a quick comms check with us? Again,
Should be a timeout on a switch to talk.
I'm absolutely confident that whatever he was going to say is truly, literally turning my vision on how I've viewed CCP and then Dust and gaming in general, but unfortunately we can't hear him again. Hey, Silly, you back, man?
Yeah, Rabbit's here.
Okay, all right. We lost you somewhere right about the time you start to call for amens. So can you give us a TLDR version of what you had there a minute ago?
Okay, sorry. Basically, what I was just saying. Can y'all hear me? Is it working, or am I breaking down?
Yeah, no, go ahead. We'll let you know when we can't hear you.
Okay, gotcha. Basically what I'm saying is the game in itself is in a state where it's been stripped down enough already. A lot has been pulled away from the game. Tanks, vehicles are, I would say, a prime example. Like logistic vehicles have been ripped away. A lot of LAVs, a lot of tanks. But you have to work with the element that we're surrounded in right now, basically building off of what's presented in front of us. And I feel that, it's that's the route I would like to go, just because you want to bring more people to the game. You want to bring in a more better sense of enjoyment. So there's a separation in that aspect,
Okay, no, I think that's a fair way to look at it. Now, by the way, I would like to dive on something that Aeon brought up, which I think is very relevant to all of this, and it's kind of, how do you see yourself? And I do think it was very, very, very critical the way Rattati framed, not frame as in CCP frame, but the way he framed his perception of Dust, which basically means this is what he's attempting to drive the game to, is that it is a tactical shooter versus something else. So that is an interesting thought process in terms of like what that means to different folks. I'm a huge fan of those type of games. I like them way, way, way better than your standard Twitch-based, one done kind of games. I was a long-time Rainbow Six fan, Arma, all that kind of stuff. Big fan of those. So I really liked what he said in that brief sit rep when he very clearly said he views this as a tactical shooter game. And I was kind of curious, what do you guys think that means for the game? Like based on what you see now, what are like one or two things that you think they would need to adjust, given what we have with the PS3? I grant you that. What are the one or two things you'd like to see him adjust if that's really what we want the game to be, as a tactical shooter?
Well, I'm just not even sure if that's necessarily something that the community wants, though. I mean, Dust has always been, in its own way, a high health tactical shooter because, movement mechanics, flanking maneuvers, like actual infantry tactics can be applied in matches and actually be effective. But at the same time, the high health of this game leads to the dancing in the box kind of gameplay that's been in the game. Now I think the strafe speed going back to near chromosome levels will be something that is going to definitely change the feel of the game a lot, but I think there just has to be caution in that movement is definitely one of the more dangerous things that you can meddle with in terms of a game, because if Arma is good and all. I've played Arma and tactical shooters as well and have enjoyed those, but at the same time, sometimes that slow tempo and slow pace of the game can really drive away a lot of people. So that's something to be wary of as well. I think it has to be a balance.
Well, right. Another thing that you have to consider as far as like tactical shooters is like you got games like Rainbow Six, which is considered a tactical shooter, but it's considered a tactical shooter in a sense that the HP is very low and you're going to die very, very quickly. I mean, it's just like one bullet and you're down, which I don't think would really work for Dust. Otherwise, the fitting system would be completely pointless. So, it's like it's not so much, what do we do as a tactical shooter so much as what aspects of a tactical shooter can we borrow and be successful.
Yeah, you raise a good point there that the fitting system kind of requires a longer time to kill, so you actually notice differences in the fitting rather than just I'm dying in one bullet versus two. So I think that's very valid. And I think people get too caught up on the name tactical shooter. I think it's a very broad phrase and it can mean a lot of things. So I think that you're completely right and that we need to really evaluate what parts of that general definition we actually want and which parts don't actually make sense. I mean, like you said, Rainbow Six has an extremely low time to kill, but that wouldn't work for Dust, but you can consider that a tactical shooter. So it's certainly not a Twitch shooter. It's not like Destiny, but it's definitely more tactical, but not quite the same. So yeah, I think we do need to look at what we actually want to be, not on a broad naming scheme, but rather on an individual, piece by piece aspect of the game.
Well, right. Another expansion about that is this is a game set 23,000 years into the future, and we are using power armor. So if like the time to kill is too low, then it starts to lose its feel as, like I feel like a super soldier. That was one of the big things in the reviews early on when Dust went into official release, is that, they said it just felt like, spreadsheets with minor variations depending on whether or not you went armor or shields. They said there was no real sort of aspect of, I feel like a super soldier. And I think that's something that we need to kind of, address. And we could maybe do that with post-level 5 content, maybe not,
Yeah, if time to kill gets too low, not only does that devalue your suits and the whole fitting strategy of the game, but it devalues how you've put your skill into your character too. And I absolutely am not on board with anything that drops the time to kill down even more. And it makes it even harder for support players to make an impact in the game too, because by the time they get to anyone, they're already dead. So I'm definitely not on board with any. If that's the definition of tactical, is to lower time to kill even more, then I don't want anything to do with it.
What about the War Barge upgrade that increases your damage?
I would say that the game has landed in a pretty good place in terms of its time to kill. We're a little bit higher than games like Halo, actually. So, I mean, in some instances with certain suits, that could be lower, with scout suits or lightly fitted suits. But overall, I think that the TDK in the game is in a sweet spot. But I think you guys do bring up a really good point. When someone says tactical shooter, what do they mean? Do they mean the movement? Do they mean the time to kill? Do they mean actual? To me, I think what it comes down to is that Dust is supposed to be a thinking shooter. More than anything else, you have to think about your fit. You have to think about how you're engaging. This person's Caldari shield tank, so I need to usually Caldari shield tank player, so I need to bring anti-shield weaponry. Those types of decisions, or on the battlefield as you go down, you're like, okay, these using projectile weapons. Maybe we should all switch to shield tank suits. I mean, you don't really see that very much. The meta is kind of set in its way in terms of what's effective on the battlefield right now. But I think maybe moving forward in the future, that's something that we can maybe have in the game. Maybe we have damage profiles, maybe we have those sorts of things, but of course with a balance towards it. You don't want the game to become so complex that it's unapproachable.
Well, just as a quick note, tactical shooter, right? That maybe we're getting hung up on some verbology there, but at least for me, the way I look at it, it usually means that there are tactics involved, which implies a team-based architecture or structure that drives you to certain types of play. So, or at least it incentivizes certain types of play. So you can certainly lone wolf, but I think we'd all agree that, as they say, teamwork is OP. And that's the one thing I sincerely hope they never nerf. So from that aspect, I think broadly, anything that emphasizes team play or incentivizes team play, like refresh or deeper squad leader orders, or perhaps even platoon orders once we start getting team deploy out there, which I think would be a massive shot in the arm to Dust, is team deploy. I think that'd be a huge thing. One of the things at Rainbow Six, and again, I've been playing Rainbow Six for since the very first one came out many moons ago. That was a tactical shooter because your time to kill was actually quite low over the course of a given quote unquote match or instance, because most of the time was spent trying to get yourself into position and utilize team tactics or a collaborative set of tactics from an individual to a collective base to achieve your objective. And if you did it really well, the other team's time to kill was very low. If you did it poorly, yours would be. And that was basically where that came from. So again, I think it's more about emphasizing team type activity. And I do grant you that there is something to the sci-fi sort of super soldier aspect to it that I do think Dust really does miss. I mean, the closest we got to it, I think, was the Myo5 thing, and I was not a fan of that. The whole leaping 30 meters in the air shit, that was basically like playing a really bad version of Tribes, which was not a good game to start with, or at least I didn't think it was. So,
sacrilege.
Right.
It was interesting for about 5 minutes, and then it was just wow, this is too much right now.
Oh god, I had so many hours in Tribes too. You don't even know.
I think where the Myos are at right now are actually in a good area. I don't think it's too over the top now.
Yeah, I think they've definitely done a good job of wheeling it in.
Well, it was like the video that actually, Jason, I think you helped me out with that, was the video that we posted with the Myros, and how 5 is just ridiculous.
5 was crazy. I had a suit for that. It was nuts.
You know what, though? You know what though? I think that the fix. I don't want to go off too far off topic on this, but I think the fix, it didn't really fix any of the combat Mayos that people were complaining about, and then it took away some of the verticality that was kind of gained using the Mayos in terms of access. I still think that a better way to have approached it, but which would have been more dev intensive, would have been to change the mechanics on how they worked. So like you hold X to charge up a jump in order to get a max jump, that kind of stuff. But, I mean, we have what we have now. We can just hope that maybe down the line we get the jetpacks or jump packs, as they were talking about, and things like that nature.
All right, I agree.
Okay. All right. Cool. So any other saved rounds on this topic before we kind of move on to a couple other ones?
You had me at team deploy, bro. You had me at team deploy.
I threw that in there for you, man.
Squad broadcast. Squad broadcast. I want to be able to broadcast that I need ammo or that I need reps.
So, actually, this is Kain. You're totally psychic for a small, would-be emperor of space in a game that very few people play. That's actually a really good segue to what I want to talk about next. And this is something that's kind of personal to me. It's like near and dear, and actually, we had something posted in the Mumble chat earlier that kind of keyed this up, but it goes back to that. It's really about refreshing the in-match HUD or the situational awareness of the player. So we've had basically the same HUD, heads-up display, if you will, and the same suite of UI in-match for a very, very long time. There have been periodic, really maybe more like episodic touches on having racially specific, reticles and HUD layouts on your screen. There's been a lot of talk about, hey, we need something that shows bandwidth, that shows equipment relevancy, particularly for the Logi players. That gets kind of dramatic. There's been a lot of different discussions about that. Maybe relooking how the compass bezel, like your little mini map in the top corner works, but we haven't really seen an actual hands getting laid on that component of the game. I'm just kind of curious. Do you guys think it's about time that we did that? And then going hand in hand with that would be, I think, things like squad orders, platoon orders, the ability for a teammate to broadcast for ammo, broadcast for reps, just like you, or hives, or whatever. Just curious, like in terms of the in-match situational awareness and user interface, what do you guys think that we should actually start maybe taking a look at and maybe generating some feedback for?
And the first thing that you can do is if you think about it, you hit R2 and you press, you hold R2 and then you press in the stick, the right stick. I'm using muscle memory, so I'm trying to remember it. But, to bring up the comma rows for the squad leader, there's a lot of empty notches on that. And not only that, if you're a squad member, you don't get that used. You don't have that used at all. I mean, I was playing Battlefield 4 the other day, and they have a full comma rows. It seems like for such a team-based game, there's so much reliance on voice comms, which is also is both good and bad. It seems like we need more ways to interact non-verbally with our teammates. And it seems like one thing that would really be nice that I would love to see is everyone in your squad has their name always visible. Like I can't tell you the number of times I've been like, hey, you green dot over there by the CRU, you have a shotgunner. Oh, you're already dead.
Yeah, for real. But another thing is on that team-based aspect is like I know it was like supposed to be like a performance enhancer to, remove the ability to like see names in the chats while you're in battle. But like doing that, I mean, like you can't join squad in the middle of a team in the middle of a battle.
That is very aggravating, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, for such a team-based game, like that usability is just, oh man. But like as far as like the comma rows and whatnot, I totally agree. And I was gonna bring up the whole thing, but you beat me to it. So props.
Man, and one thing about that what's it called, the comma rows?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, man. Yeah, one thing about that thing is it's hard for me at least to be able to select whatever thing I'm trying to put down. Like if I'm trying to put down the defend order, 9 times out of 10 I put down the fucking capture order, and I'm walking around like an idiot. Pointing at shit to, lay down the capture order or the attack order.
Honestly, it should be fucking context sensitive. It really should. Like instead of having like defend and attack capture, you just point at it and it automatically knows what to do.
a capture defend order, like there's nothing more frustrating than you put a capture order on an objective and you want your guys to stay on that objective, but as soon as they capture it, it disappears. So then you got to go and put a defend order. Why can't it just be a capture order that then switches to a defend order after it's done with? You know what I mean?
It's really more about, if you think about it, all of this is indicative of just putting a rally point down. What you're doing is giving a graphical focus for everybody to go or focus on that one spot. Attack and defend is as you said, contextual, and I would offer that you could probably streamline some of this and have it just, hey, mark a rally point. Like when you put that circle on the map and it shows up as a little carrot on your compass, that's where you want people to go or do something.
Well, yeah, but they also have to consider like the war point advantage to putting a defend order on an objective instead of a rally point.
I'm with you, but then you get into the game of why should that be generating more points?
Yeah. The game was better when it was broken, so I could actually use defend orders and attack orders and attack orders and everything in a contextual way to be like, hey, look at this, rather than being like.
Well, now that being said, Aeon actually brings up a good point. Now, truth in lending, I have been a long advocate for a command suit, a command suit variant in the game that gives you maybe access to different and deeper types of orders, being able to put out multiple squad orders other than just one, or mark targets or something like that. So there is something that we could probably take a look at there. Maybe as opposed to breaking it down to pure vanilla, it might be maybe deepening it. And there's some opportunities, harkening back to our post-level 5 content discussion, by the way.
Commander mode.
If you think about it, that is pretty legit. If there is a way that somebody can actually FC or actually control the battle as a commander,
but it would be,
and you'd be relevant, that would be pretty legit.
Yeah, it would. One of the problems I've seen in this game is you have people that maybe they aren't necessarily the best shooter. They're maybe not necessarily the best, run and gunner on the field. And it takes a very special person oftentimes to be able to do battlefield jobs and at the same time FC a match. I think that if you opened up the job to more people by having an actual commander role in the game, so a 17th man a 17th person that just commands the battle, even if it's for pubs, if you can imagine how much better a lot of pubs would go if they were actually orchestrated. And then we went back to the MO of having people forced into squads. Maybe the squads disband, but people auto-squatted in. I was talking to Thor Odinson the other day about this. Like, he learned a lot about the game by being randomly put in a squad. He got a mic because of it and all these sorts of things. I think... it's been mentioned before that it's out of reach in terms of the dev environment, but I just think that this game is so team-based that it would make perfect sense for it to have a commander mode in it. And it would, like you guys were talking about, level 5 content, you could have all kinds of skills associated with a commander-type role. And that's something that you could definitely, I would see a lot of veterans gravitating towards as they kind of skill up their suits and all that kind of stuff.
So you were saying, Kain, when you talk about that 17th person, I don't know if you played any of Battlefield Hardline, but they have an interesting mechanic to where if you're doing the cops versus the robbers, I think it's like the heist mode or whatever, where you're in the bank. There's a 17th person for both sides that that's what's called the hacker, where you're not in the game per se, like you don't have a little dude running around, but you're looking at the overview map, and you can what's the word I'm looking for? Change or like put logs in the road for the enemy to stumble upon. Like you'll fuck up their mini map by hacking a camera, and it'll reveal the enemy players to your guys, but making your people invisible to the enemy. Are you thinking something like that, or are you thinking like an actual person a 17th person who runs around and doesn't have a gun or whatever?
Battlefield 2 was the first game that I played that really had a dedicated commander mode. They stripped out Battlefield 3, which was one of the reasons I hated it. They added it back in for Battlefield 4, and they made it come back as that hacker thing for Battlefield Hardline. I really do think that it would potentially add a lot to the game, though. And some of the people that are mentioning, Pokey, if you want to take that about actual squad members themselves being able to mark stuff up, I think that's a good point as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was just kind of talking in the Rumble chat here, but as a squad member, not as a squad leader, but as a member, I want to be able to just throw down a temporary 30-second waypoint that just sits there and everyone can see it. So I'm not saying, okay, the guy is, 3 lefts on the right of the Galente penis-shaped tower next to Alpha. I can just go click, it's there, and people know what I'm talking about. Because if you have a TACnet and you're supposed to have this advanced, HUD with all this stuff on, and I have to give, verbal commands for, based off of landmarks, it's a little silly, and it's really something that I shouldn't be having to do. It's not fluid, and I think it makes communication really awkward.
Yeah. Hey, look out! He's behind you. Turn around.
I hate that, by the way. One of the things
Useless.
that would be legit, if you pull up the TACnet map, there's already some tools that are kind of nascent on there. I mean, you can actually give squad commands from there, but it's very cumbersome to do so. But something as simple as adding an alphanumeric grid to it, like instead of that, you can say, hey, the sniper is in Bravo 2 or something like that. Something that gives you a reference point, just like they do on the feedback maps that they give us, the players, to give them feedback on where bugs are. That would be huge. If they just added that to the map and then made it maybe a little bit easier to, or maybe some more functionality in that map, I think that would be pretty handy.
I would like to see Universal Command as well.
The whole the grid thing, the grid map has actually been proposed before, and there was actually a dev response on it, and apparently it's actually incredibly hard to do because if you try to put like a 2D layer with like a grid map, and anytime you move the camera, it's going to change the position of where the grids are.
No. I'm just in the TACnet map. I mean, is that what you're talking about?
Yes,
that is a 2D map.
Talking about. Well, that is what I'm saying.
No, it's not.
Yeah. You would have to make it a 3D map.
If you look at it, it is a 3D map with, it's a 2D look at a 3D map, and yeah.
You know what's something else that bugs me? The lack of a south, east, and west on the stupid mini map.
Very true.
That's legit.
Oh my gosh!
Or on the map in general.
Or the fact that when you spawn in to a map, like, the map has an orientation of like what's up, down, left, and right. But then when you spawn in, magnetic north is going to be some random ass direction for no good reason. Right. It needs to be this. I don't know why that's not the same.
It also brings me back to, I think it was a tech demo for when they were posting things on Legion. There was a video on YouTube, and they were showing off basically a compass that was at the top of the screen. It would show your current heading with cardinal directions, so you could actually, look at something. Okay, that's due north, 50 degrees or whatever. Something that would. So I'm not looking at the minimap. I can actually just look at the top of my screen, just along the top, and be able to see which direction I'm facing. Would be amazing as well.
What absolutely kills me though is that that was only possible because the actual HUD, the UI, was 3D, whereas in Dust we have a 2D, and the compass wouldn't work.
So it makes it incredibly hard for them to manipulate it as well. Hence, never getting south, east, and west on the stupid little mini map thing.
We're basically talking about like incredibly basic first-person shooter heads-up display user interface stuff. That even the most simple games will have, and it's interesting because most games are devised from player versus environment, then on to a player versus player aspect. Very few games are truly designed with player versus player first. And it's kind of interesting how this works because in player versus environment games, all of these things that we're describing are innately built into the user interface, usually during the gameplay, because that's how you actually move the players from objective to objective. You orient them on where they should go or what path they need to take to get there. And even in fairly dynamic games like Ghost Recon, for example, this is basically what we're describing is a more accurate navigational tool and map reference tool that is probably much more relevant to player versus player than it is for player versus environment. All right, so I did want to throw my shout out to real quick racial specific HUDs. I know that's probably never going to happen, but that's one of the things I always thought would be pretty neat, was that you could customize your HUD, or it would be somewhat different, even if for no other reason. Color scheme and shapes of things would be different. Biracial types of your suit. I think that would be kind of cool, actually. And also harken back to one of the things Dystopia was talking about earlier, reference the ability to customize weapons. The ability to customize weapons, loadouts, and how you interface with the game, like i.e. your tactical user interface, like that would be one of my long-term sort of, like, if they were ever going to make the game correctly from the ground up, that would be one of the things that I would find very, very pleasing from an immersion standpoint, is the ability to do all that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now, guys, we're gonna tee it up. We have exhausted all the basic topics that I had laid on for tonight.
You could tackle another CPM candidate.
Who do you want to put on the spot for that?
Take volunteers.
I don't think we want to do that tonight. I think we would probably prefer to have done that at a little bit different time. But we'll have plenty of time between now and whenever they actually execute the election, which I think is still July, right?
No further update on that. So yeah.
I mean, they just said they were going to start it. I assume they're going to open it officially in July, and then the actual elections will be sometime after that. Does that make sense?
One can only hope that it's not like, surprise, submit your application. Surprise, elections are next week.
That wouldn't surprise me, though. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, no, seriously, those. I think it probably would be a bad idea. We have a lot of good folks on tonight, but it would be. I think we would like to kind of prepare a little bit better for the next round of candidates. So, for everybody who's a CPM candidate who's in the channel but hasn't sat down with Bait and I, you're all on notice. So for the following people: BAMM, Kain Spero, Pokey, and SMB, and Silly, and Dystopia. I think you thinking about running for CPM2 as well?
Yes, I've thrown my hat in for CPM2.
Outstanding. So
Kain is not running for CPM2.
Kain, Pokey, SMB, and Silly Rabbit, you guys are all on notice. So we'll probably pick up 2 to 3 of you next week. Kain, if we'd like to go ahead and knock yours out, because I know a lot of people have questions for you.
You can't even get Kain's in today? I think you should be able to get Kain's in.
I don't like you all right now.
No, it's okay. It's all good, man. So no, trust me. We actually do want to make sure that we're providing some relevant discussion per individual candidate. Once you get past kind of the vanilla, hey, what do you want to be a CPM? That kind of thing. So we did want to start off slow and kind of end slower. That's usually how we do things here. So on that note, what we're going to do is kind of a sort of hybrid of our lightning round and shout outs. So we're going to go through our mumble list again, give your shout out, and if there's anything that you wanted to throw out on people, maybe as a potential topic for next week's show, I was like, hey, let's talk about this next time I'm on the show. We'll take that down and we'll attack that pretty violently next time. So we're going to start at the top of the list with our special guest, Aeon Amadi. If you can give us a quick shout out, and if there's anything you want us to tee up for one of the next 1 or 2 Biomassed shows, man, have at it.
Sure. I want to shout out to Team Green. Love you guys. You guys are awesome. And as far as the new topics for next week, you should totally hit up in-game performance.
Alrighty. Anything you want to bring up on one of the future shows?
Yeah, performance.
Okay. Yeah, no, sorry. Totally wigged out on you. And Aiwha Bait.
I'd like to give a shout out to my corporation, the Demonic Cowboys, and people from that corporation listening. Thank you all for that. As far as topics to bring up on a later show, right there at the beginning when we were talking with Aeon, he brought up something about the user interface that I think would. I guess we kind of talked about that, but I think a more in-depth discussion of what people would like to see and some changes that could be made would be great. Also, the new player experience still needs some work, I think, and I'd like to see what everybody on the show thinks about that.
All right, that's a good one. Kain, or correction, wait, hold on, I totally jacked that up. BAMM HAVOC.
Just give me a sec. I'm actually having an Amadon just now. Just move to the next person. I'm just kidding
Okay.
someone on Eve.
Yep. No problem. Dystopia.
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to Luther Mandrix, my buddy Dev Dander, and my court members in Internal Air. And actually, Aiwha Bait took my topic. I was going to suggest new player experience as something we could talk about at a future time.
Absolutely, and that's probably quite relevant since we got a lot of people that will, in theory, be giving some feedback to Rattati about how do you take care of new folks arriving to the game. Okay, Kain Spero.
Just a shout out also again to the crazy people that continue to play this game, and to the Negative Feedback Alliance. I mean, for topics, I would really like to touch on. Actually, I wouldn't mind discussing some of the core things. If someone wanted to change core things, what is the core? What do you think is the most important things to the game? Like, what at its core is the core, so to speak?
That's actually not a bad topic. That would be one of those things that next time we have Rattati on is actually maybe focusing the discussion more on not so much the nitty gritty in the weeds part, but like, hey, what do you see as the core? Like, have him describe to us what he thinks a tactical shooter means, what he thinks the core of the game would be, which is then derived of what kind of game is he trying to help develop and sustain. So that's a good one, Kain. Middle of the list, Soraya Xel. What do you think?
What am I being asked again?
Shout outs, and if there's something you'd like to talk on.
Okay, I thought it was for shout outs, but you what do you think in shout outs I was very confused on what.
Okay, well, so
all right.
Again, before you make me go on a tirade, I know this is going to be tough for you.
I already told you at the start of the show I don't pay attention during the podcast.
We know that. That is readily apparent.
Well, there's enough guests that I don't need to do anything. But no, I've been playing the. I'm gonna give my shout out to the Steam Summer Sale stupid monster click game thing because I'm gonna need a new mouse.
Okay, so shout out to that, and you want to talk about doing something with your mouse. I noticed we have a trend here. Okay, Pokey.
This is kind of a long one, so forgive me, but I'm going to give a shout out to Yoshi P over at Square Enix. He's the executive producer for Final Fantasy XIV, and I want to congratulate him on the successful release of their first expansion, 3.0 Heaven's Ward. For those of you who don't know the history of Final Fantasy, when the game was initially released, 1.0, it was a total flop, so bad that the executive producer back then was basically forced to resign, and Square Enix kind of doubled down on the project and gave it to Yoshi P, who effectively rebuilt the game from the ground up and put it on PC, PS3, and PS4, which was a big part of why it ended up being so successful. And those are all cross-play games. It's an awesome game, really good. The expansion's really cool. And yeah, just shout out to him because I think it's a real testament to what can happen if a company really takes the leap of faith and doubles down on a project to put some money behind talent and really try to make it be a success. So props to you guys.
Okay, and for those of you that don't speak Pokeyese, that is an incredibly well camouflaged bit of tinfoilery where he just called out that CCP has sold dust to Bethesda.
I picked up on that one.
Damn it! You ruined it for me, man. Inhale sometimes,
Ubisoft.
I want to say that I think BAMM's right. If they sold to Ubisoft, that'd be fucking totally legit. It'd be Rainbow Six in space. Okay.
Rainbow Six in space, motherfucker. Yeah.
on that note, SirManBoy, shout-outs, brother.
Yeah, I'll give a shout-out to everybody in Molon Labe, although active Molon players are a bit of an endangered species these days, but still, hi to all of you guys. I also give a shout-out to a couple guys I was able to touch base with this past week and kind of catch up with. Thor Odinson 42, it was nice squatting with him, and had a long conversation with the famous Contraband Joe, who is somebody that I played MAG with back in the day, so shout out to him and all of his boys as well. And in terms of things that I want to talk about in future shows or would always be open to talking about in future shows, you know me, man. I love talking about the possibilities and the potential of a team deploy system and what that could mean for Dust. So if you ever want to talk team deploy, I'm your man.
Sounds good. All right, SirManBoy, shout outs. So we're going to start a charity. We're going to be putting a like a Patreon up for buying Silly a mic. And if you could just feel free to donate either real life or in-game iskies to me directly, I'll ensure that we get him a
Can you guys
mic.
hear me?
Shouldn't we fund like the
Hello?
actual like
Hello?
the hosting, the podcast,
Wait,
the
there he is.
streaming?
We hear you.
Silly,
Yeah, we hear you, Silly.
Could you guys hear me?
Yeah, okay, quickly do your shout out
Yeah,
before you
yeah.
go away.
Yeah, give me a
Oh
shout
man,
out.
I'm
and
so
then give
sorry.
me-
My mic has been crap this whole time.
in 3 words or okay, so a shout out, and in 3 words or less, what do you want for a future show topic? Go.
Shout out to Negative Feedback. Shout out to all my lodges. And I want to keep talking about the forward momentum of this game until it happens, whether it be stat increases here, updates here, tweaking here, higher level here, wherever we need to go to make it happen. I want to do it because all these ideas are awesome and they're feasible. It's just, it's about getting it, pushing because it can happen. So let's make it happen.
All right, man. Sounds good. And so a big shout out to everybody that showed up tonight. I really appreciate the packed house tonight. Really big shout out to Aeon Amadi, a CPM2 candidate, for being kind of the first in the chute for the CPM sit down that we're going to have with as many candidates as that would like to come on the show. And we will be doing multiple candidates per show in future iterations, but we wanted to kind of focus it down for just one for our for the guy who's hitting the breach and get first guy in the door, so to speak. So that being said, again, appreciate to Aeon Amadi, Aiwha Bait, BAMM HAVOC, Dystopia, Kain Spero, and SirManBoy and SirManBoy for coming on. We really appreciate you guys coming on and talking about this. For everybody in the Biomassed Skype channels, really appreciate you guys listening to the show and giving us some fairly humorous feedback as we go through this. So thanks again very much.
I'm missing out on that.
It's funny. It's funny as shit, honestly. And I do appreciate all the Twitter feeds that we get pumped over to us. So thanks a lot for that, guys.
And I just
go ahead. I'm sorry.
want to remind everyone that we have that the contest. Submit summaries for this week. Last week, send it to Soraya at biomassed.net. You might win some ISK.
Absolutely. And if you want to put that out on Twitter, if you could do me a favor and just throw out.
No, it's only for people who actually listen to the show.
No, I'm with you. So if you want to get involved in this from the Twitter aspect, and we'll make sure the information gets to Zell, it'll be #punch Zell in the throat if he interrupts Jay again on the show. If you could just throw that into the Twitter, and I know it's 140 characters, but I'm sure you can get your point in. So on that's my shout out, and I'll talk about anything anybody wants for the future shows. So I appreciate everybody being on, and guys, this is episode 59. We're going to bring this one to a close.